One of the great Psalms in the Hebrew Psalter is Psalm 23. There is a statement that I appreciate in the Sonsino books of the Bible on the Psalm, written by Cohen. It reads, "Truly it has been remarked, the world could spare many a huge book better than this sunny little psalm. It has dried many tears and supplied the mold into which many hearts have poured their peaceful faith." How true that is. And I would like to just go through the psalm briefly in a brief message or sermon. We see in the first four verses the work of God as a shepherd. And then in verses 5 to 6, his work as a host. Those are the two movements of the psalm. We begin Mizmor le David, a psalm of David. Adonai ro'i lo exar. The Lord shepherds me, I shall not lack. And it's interesting here, it's very personal. The Lord shepherds me, each one of us, he shepherds, he cares for. And we could say, I will not lack. He did not say the Lord is our shepherd, but the Lord is my shepherd. And just like he was David's shepherd, so he is our shepherd as well. And then in verse 2, Benot desha yarbitseni, al me menachot yana haleni. He causes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside restful waters. I love that verse. He causes us to recline in green pastures. He leads us beside restful waters. How we need that today. We live in a very, what I used to call, what I used to share with students, in a journalistic society. Everything is hurry, hurry, hurry. And the other day we were on the highway and it was raining and people were traveling 80 miles an hour and people work 2 and 3 jobs to make it. Young couples or young families are taking their children to sports almost 24/7. We're constantly on the go. And so I think what the psalmist is saying here, what the Lord is saying, or the psalmist is saying, he wants to cause us to slow down, not be like gerbils, to slow down and to recline in green pastures. He wants to lead us beside restful waters, not fast moving waters, but restful waters. We go on in verse 3. Nafshi yeshovev yancheni v'magalei tzedek lema'an shmo. He restores my soul. He causes me to be guided in beaten paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I think the thought here is he wants to renew our soul. It's sort of like if you take a nice shower on a hot day, you feel refreshed. And I think that's the thought. He wants to renew our soul. And furthermore, he guides us in the tried paths of righteousness. And I think the thought here is these are beaten paths that the shepherd has traversed many, many times, and we can trust him. He's not going to lead us over a cliff. And I take heart in that. He causes us to be led in straight paths, proper paths, because his name's at stake, and he's a faithful shepherd. Then in verse 4, it's a beautiful verse. Gam kia lake begates al mavet lo irara kia ta imadi. Shiftecha uminshantecha hema yanachamuni. That is, Yea, though I walk in the valley of deep darkness. The word here in the Hebrew, shadow of death, should probably be translated simply gloominess, deep darkness. And I love the alliteration here in Hebrew, lo ira ra kiatayimadi. That is, I will not fear evil. Why? Because you are with me, and your rod and your staff, they comfort me. What a word of encouragement that basically he wants to, as we're going through those dark times of life, we can know, like the psalmist, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod would beat off wild animals that might prey on the sheep, and your staff gives you sure footing. They're a comfort to me. And as I think about this text, I want to make application as a Christian minister to the New Testament. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. And Jesus said, I am with you always, even unto the end of the age. And nothing, when we're in Christ, can ever sever us from his love. And so it's a beautiful, uh, there's a beautiful New Testament application to Jesus Christ. I would like to say, when I was in high school, back about 1958, I remember after basketball practice one night, we were coming out, and the hoods, we called them the hoods, were smoking cigarettes in front of Linda McKinley High School, where I went to high school in Columbus, Ohio. And as we went out, the hood said, hey, do you guys want to rumble? And what that meant was, do you want to have a fight? Well, one of the fellows that was with us on the team said, yes, we'll be back in a half hour. And I thought, what in the world is he talking about? The hoods, you don't mess with the hoods. Well, we went at that time to a little hamburger place called Jim Chuck's. And I still remember that our friend on the basketball team called his brother. Now, his brother, we called him Mr. Hollywood. Everybody knew who he was. He was like a Golden Gloves champion and so forth. Even the hoods knew he was. And so what happened, he called him, he said, the hoods want to rumble with us in about a half hour. And Mr. Hollywood, as we called him, said, no problem, man, I'll be there. And so in a half hour, we were all waiting, and we were afraid. And they were still smoking their cigarettes in front of in front of Linda McKinley. And I remember he got out of his car, and he always wore sunglasses, even in the winter time. And he got out of his car, adjusted his sunglasses, and began to walk in front of us. You know something? There was no rumble that afternoon. The hoods began to scatter when they saw Mr. Hollywood. He was sort of like the Fonzie. Some of you might remember the show, The Fonzie. He was like that. Everybody knew who he was. So I think when I look at a passage like this, I see in the New Testament where Jesus Christ, I'm not trying to compare him with Mr. Hollywood, but he's gone before us. And everything that looks dark, he's defeated. He's defeated sin. He's defeated death. He's defeated Satan. And that's good news. And all the things that we're going through, the dark valley, when you think about it in Hebrew, you had like a valley, and you go between the valley, and the sun is blocked out. And it's scary because wild animals could be there to prey on the sheep, but thieves could be there. And I think the thought here is not just only speaking of death, but anything in life can become a dark valley. Economics can become a dark valley. How are we going to make it financially can become a dark valley. Sickness, loneliness, and the end of life as well. So you take the good news is that Jesus is going before us. He is that shepherd that is, can I say, going before us, clearing the way. And I take good, can I say I take heart in that, especially at my age, to know that Jesus is that shepherd that goes before us. Then we come to verse 5 and we look at the host. It says, Ta'arok lefanai shulchan neged sororai, dishanta vashemen roshi kosi revaya. That is, you arrange a table before me in the presence of my adversaries. You anoint my head with oil, and my cup is satiated. It's full and running over. Notice the beauty of this. He's running out of fear from his adversaries, and I take this to be a Bedouin, calls him into his tent. He said, come in. And a host was to protect his guests. And I think the thought is he brings the Bedouin, or the Bedouin brings him into the tent and throws a party. One of the things that I've sort of found in life sometimes, that sometimes in the hardest times of life, the Lord seems to throw a party and he invites us into his tent. And the Bedouin was to protect the guest in the tent. And as I'm looking at this, he not only protects him, but he's a royal host. He's not a stingy host. He feeds him royally, anoints his head, his cup is running over. Years ago, there used to be a restaurant called Ryan's. I don't think it's around anymore. It used to be in Columbus, and when we lived, uh, basically in other places, I don't think it's around anymore. And so I used to love to go to Ryan's. It had all kinds of food. I'd usually start with dessert and work my way back. But the thought is, this is what this royal host does. He provides you in a royal way, cares for us. He anoints our head. And that's what God is. And I believe in the New Testament, Jesus is that royal host that invites us in, can I say, to his tent and feeds us and cares for us. And then we come to that final verse. Ach tov v'chesed yirdafuni kol yemei chayai v'shavti b'veit Adonai la'orek yamim. Surely goodness and loyal love will chase after me all the days of my life, and I will return, is the way I'm going to translate this, to the house of the Lord for a length of days. You could also translate it, I will dwell, depending on how you read the Hebrew, whether it's Vashafti or Vashifti, it depends. But at any rate, the thought is, I'm going to keep going back to this house. I can't find a better place to be because of the way that God takes care of me all the days of my life. When I was a boy, down the block where I lived, one of my friends, his mother would make these wonderful chocolate chip cookies. And I remember going there and having them and enjoying them so much that my mother said, Gary, I think that you almost live there. And it was true because they were delicious cookies right out of the oven. And I still remember that. So as I look at this text, God's goodness and his loyal love chases after us all the days of our life. And so instead of enemies chasing, God begins to chase after us with his kindness and goodness. You know, I remember when I was young, sometime years ago, I should say, it was dark and I was coming home, and suddenly someone was following behind me, and I became afraid, and I began to walk more briskly, and though the person behind me began to walk more briskly, and finally I started to run, and the voice said, "Wait, wait, wait, Gary, it's me." And lo and behold, it was one of my best friends who was trying to catch up with me. That's what I see God doing here. He is pursuing us with his loyal love and with his kindness. And that gives me encouragement especially as I get older and life can become more and more sometimes challenging and more dark, really, in a lot of ways. So it's a wonderful passage. I remember when I was studying in the Jewish world, one of the rabbis said, uh, when you look at verse 5, you arrange a table before me. We, as rabbis, are to arrange tables, meaning study, to feed people. And I've thought about this even as pastors. Pastors are to arrange a table and feed. They're to be hosts, feeding people the precious word of God and the truths of his word. Just an interesting sideline. So, what a beautiful, beautiful psalm. I was sharing it today in our family, and I thought I'd just put it up on YouTube to know that we have a divine shepherd who basically is not only a shepherd, but a wonderful host. And I believe as a Christian that this is also applied to Jesus Christ, who said, I am the great shepherd of the sheep, and I lay down my life for the sheep. What a beautiful text. And I just wanted to give a moment of meditation. I hope it helps someone. God bless you all, and thank you.